Okay, chapter 11 is about the environment, and I know this concerns many of you in your papers. So this may be a chapter that you want to really delve into, as well as looking at some of the references in the book. So I did not do any videos this week about environment as I did for the others. The reason why is that there's a lot of stuff to do this week. I want you to focus on getting your outline and getting your paper started. So we know some of the key environmental concerns, air quality, water quality, and going down the list, you can see that these are concerns. You are younger people, and this really concerns you because as us baby boomers, have left you a mess. And some of us are unapologetic about it. Some of us feel, well, we're not going to be around, so that's your problem. And that's not the way a community works. So that's another issue. You may have that in your paper or not. So these are some of the things that you'll be dealing with as an adult, as you continue to be adults, not that you aren't now. And so way back in 1946, these are just some of this, but we had some treaties signed, and even then, some of them have been taken off or have been amended. In Japan, whaling is a big industry, and they've had some accommodations. And even in talking about the right whales, that's a species of whale in Maine, there are some current potential laws to limit lobster fishermen from doing from fishing in certain areas because it threatens the right whales. And so the lobster fishermen are fighting back because that's their livelihood. So it's really not just so an easy thing to say, okay, we'll protect all these types of fish while endangering other fish, and then also because of the economic impact on these laws. So that's something that is always a problem. And we know we were part of the Paris Agreement in terms of the global warming and climate change. And then the previous administration took us out of that. And now we are returning to the Paris Agreement. But again, there are certain groups of people that feel that that's a threat to our industries and to our economy. The recent winter weather in Texas caused a major power failure, and there were questions as to why, if that was renewable energy, and it was not renewable energy because they are a non-regulated system, electrical system that still relies mainly on non-reusable fuels such as coal and oil. And so that's in the situation there. Different philosophies as to some other states like Maine that's pushing for solar energy and wind energy. They are the five major threats to biodiversity. Clearance of forests. If you are aware of this, you may know that the clearance of the Amazon is a major issue in terms of the climate change of the whole world. Invasive species. This is kind of interesting in Maine because we've had some invasive species of fish that have threatened our the natural living fish in our state. Even milfoil, that's a invasive species that can affect the water quality, has been brought in by boats, bottom of boats, and now there are some regulations being put into place where you will have to clean the bottoms of your boats so that you don't carry any invasive species. So you can see that these five threats are something we've been talking about for a long time. So this is another important part of this chapter. And of course, climate change, greenhouse effect, environmental migrants, those are all things related to the rise in the heat and the changes in climate, more severe storms. It seems like we have these once in a century storms almost every 5 to 10 years now. So that's something that we've been talking about for a long time. Greenhouse effect was something we were talking about when I was a kid, so that's 105 years ago. So there's something in it was interesting that when the COVID pandemic began and there was a lot of sheltering inside, they had pictures of some of these major cities and how cleaner their air became due to this shutdown. So we know that there is an effect, but in the long run, these things have to occur for a major period of time for it to be truly effective. And these are changes in carbon dioxide concentration since the middle of the and since the 19th century. And you can see that the temperature has gone up, keeps going up and then down, up and down, up and down. And if you're an old guy like me, you probably think that what happened to the big snowstorms we used to get in the winter? Now it's just this mixed precipitation, crappy weather, and sometimes we don't get a lot of snow over the whole winter. Um, that's been going on for a long time. Could be to climate change, could be to just cycles. You can see the levels of CO2 has gone up as well, and that has gone up almost linearly at a slower rate than the temperature. And this is carbon dioxide emissions by the five biggest producers. And so that big black line is China. We're the orange one, and you can see we've gone down in the teens up to 2014. I will be curious to see if it's gone up since 2014, especially with the lack of regulations and the cutting of regulations in the previous administration. So you can read this summary on your own, but those are just the major points of this chapter. If it's a chapter that affects your paper, then take a good look at it. If not, then this is about it. You will not be tested on this chapter or any of the chapters. Now we'll go on to chapter 12. Chapter 12 is not based on Leo Tolstoy's massive book, which I recommend for you to read. Take a summer and read it if you have nothing else to read or do, like write papers. War and Peace. So we've lived in a world of war for most of our lives. Very few periods where there haven't hasn't been any war. These are the wars that are currently underway. We're still trying to pull our troops out of Afghanistan, but the Taliban is still a threat there. So the Democratic Republic of Congo has been going on since 1994. Iraq, that's still there's still well, we're not in there anymore, but there's still civil war there, and you can see the Boko Haram insurgency in West Africa. The especially when you see that kids are being kidnapped and converted. Syria has been going on for 10 years. In Yemen, with Saudi Arabia, has been fighting, and there's been some recent movement in terms of supporting Yemen in this current administration as to fight its independent war against Saudi Arabia. So there's wars going on all the time. This is interesting. These are the countries that do not have a standing army, and you can see that there are some in the Americas, such as Costa Rica, Grenada, and Panama, as long as with some of these smaller islands, and a lot of these, especially in the Pacific, are smaller islands in the Southwest Pacific area. And in Europe, you have uh, the small countries such as Andorra, Iceland, and of course Vatican City. They do have the Swiss guards, but I'm not sure if they're ready to go out to an all-out war. Um, Winners of the Nobel Peace Prize. These are some examples. You can see in 2014, Malala Yousafzai. She was the young girl that was shot by a Taliban person in Pakistan who's just been recently released from prison. Has been making threatening uh, Twitter account, Twitter tweets, which we're wondering why is he allowed to do that against Malala. So President Barack Obama won one in 2009, and this goes all the way back to down to Martin Luther King Jr. in 1964. So those are some of the examples of the Nobel Prize winners, in case this is something that you want to talk about. And this is kind of something we probably knew when we know that there's some poverty, lack of food, ability to get food in our own country. You can see that how much money we spend in terms of military spending compared to other countries, and including look at China and Russia, and those are our so-called one of some of our biggest, a couple of our biggest enemies and it's like we continue to ask for more money, and we give more money to the defense of this country, and so that may be something that raises your hackles. You can Google that to see what that means, especially when we're talking about some of the social issues worldwide that begin in this country, and you see that the spending is not equal. Just think of what education could be like if some of that was used from the defense spending. Terrorism, of course, is something that we know and have lived with for most of our lives. And of course, I will add domestic terrorism has been increasing in this country in the last few years. And we know we've seen it on television. We've seen it in terms of threats to people of different races, people of different colors. Even now, there are you would say terrorist attacks against people of Asian origin who are being blamed for the pandemic. That's been going on for about a year. So, and this is the number of terrorist incidents worldwide. And I guess we can be positive about it and say it's gone down since 2015. And I wonder, because of this pandemic, if some of those have also gone down, if it's continued to go down. So, summary, I don't need to talk a lot about war because you've lived it. There's enough videos on there. You can look at the History Channel for a history of war. I'm not aware of people talking about war as their primary thesis for their paper, but you may want to use it as a reference point as to what it has caused in terms of poverty, hunger, and other social ills. That's the purpose of this chapter. So, again, let's go back to our frustrated writer. Again, take a look at the work for this week early enough and let me know if there are some issues. Take care.